Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister of the country, and you must have been under a lot of pressure given the bad news in terms of economic activity, pressure on GDP growth is concerned, and many forecasts have also come which are saying that this phase for the world is going to be worse than the 2008 financial crisis, of course, but even worse and closer to the Great Depression of the 1930s.
Yes, this is a exceptional year, and the magnitude of the problem, I'm not sure is measured by anybody as yet. So we are in totally uncharted territory. But the only comfort is all of us are in it together. So I would think, at least in India, with our systems and institutions being strong, and with the Prime Minister who's leading from the front, literally spending in great detail time to understand, time to take inputs, time also to consult people, and then responding by appealing to people. And his appeals have been so seriously and rightly so taken by people. As a result, I think, in fact, the PIB has been putting out data comparing India based on its population to 15 different countries, all of whom are affected seriously by the pandemic, whose population put together, if taken as a whole, is equal to India. What has been the impact of the pandemic in India versus the pandemic in each of those countries, with 15 different governments attending to each of their countries? So the point that I'm trying to say is, totally new area, new terrain, all of us are walking into it, but the biggest support is of the people of India, who've been responding to the Prime Minister's appeals, largely confining to all the protocols which have been given, and then also ensuring that the pandemic is contained. There have been aberrations, no doubt, but I'm sure when you're dealing with a population of our size, overall, I think there's been such a cooperative and responsible behavior. So on that, therefore, I think I'll wait and see as we go on the impact on the economy.
But Ms. Sitharaman, many people are giving forecasts where they say, of course, IMF says 3% or anything between 1.9 to 3% and 7.4%, and there are talks of a V kind of a recovery, there are talks of a W kind of a recovery. But the fact is that the latest is also looking at a deceleration in the negative to about 5%, number one. And added to that, of course, is the problem of unemployment, which at latest estimates of the CMIE shows an unemployment rate of about 23% and only increasing, not decreasing. How do you see that kind of a challenge in a country like India, which was already going through a slowdown, had a problem with GDP numbers, had a problem with employment rates, and now comes the COVID-19 pandemic, which creates a situation which to many people is looking unsurmountable?
You're right in defining the various challenges which have all come together, especially when, let us say, after prolonged and steady intervention by the government all through last year, sometime early January, all of us were heaving a sigh of relief of some sort when green shoots started appearing. Industry also was coming forward to do quite a few scaling up, investing, trying to get back, and so on. Just then, whoever thought, not just for India, for the globe, entire world, there's this pandemic which has literally shaken all the economies, and where the government itself has to shut down. And then the debates about what will be the growth be then, what will be the employment rate, how much output would be of manufacturing. So all these, I think, to be done subsequently. First, we have to look at the economy. Can we see them getting back to doing some work post the lockdown getting lifted? As it is, a lot of exemptions have been given, even as the lockdown is still in place. The categorization of areas has happened. And we are certainly in the ministry getting information about how many enterprises have started opening up and starting to work, some 10%, some 25%, and so on. And this is happening all through May. And therefore, at this stage, my focus is on getting people back to their businesses. When I say people back, I'm not talking of the migrant workers, I'm talking about the enterprises trying to restore. That will also mean, therefore, eventually, how are they going to settle their problem about the need for workers? Is it going to be local? Is it going to be back again, the migrant? And is it going to be a mix and match of both? And if it is going to be migrant also, do they know how they are going to have to come back? Will we document them? At least now, will all of us be ready to have a proper, accounting of who's coming from where are they going to be, how skilled are they, and are they with their family? The proper documentation of this big force which is contributing to the economy. Big force in different numbers contributing to various states and their economy. We should have somewhere some data at the state level and data at the center. We should learn from this pandemic from the point of view of economic revival. Of course, the human side of it is a very big issue on which I'm sure all of us have enough things to think about and better ourselves. But on this economic revival, I think so much is dependent on a lot more reset in businesses. I did say this to the CII when I addressed them yesterday.
But Ms. Sitharaman, the challenge for data has been something that India has been actually dealing with for the last many years. Even when we were talking about unemployment numbers before the 2019 elections, there was a report that was so controversial because of the numbers that it was talking about, and then post elections the same numbers were accepted, and all along we've been talking about data, but still we don't have any scientific manner of collecting that data. So even now we don't know the real impact. But having said that, I want to ask you about the package that you've announced. There was a euphoria on the day Prime Minister said that there would be a 20 lakh crore package for the revival of the economy, and this was the 5th largest in the world, and people had a lot of expectations from this package that was to be announced by you. But 5 days of announcements later, are you satisfied with the response that you've got? Not just from the opposition parties, of course, they've been scathing about it, but then they are scathing about many things. So even if you discount opposition parties, the kind of response that you've got from the industry, from various sectors, where many people are saying, what you're saying, the reforms that you're talking about is great, but it is something that's going to happen in the medium and the long term. What about tomorrow morning for most industries where they don't have money to pay their salaries, where they don't have money to get their raw material, working capital is a problem? What about that?
If you actually look into the package, we may not have named sectors, and we didn't want, and our intention wasn't to name sectors, but yet the way in which the package has been designed, every enterprise, big, small, medium, who actually has something to do with the bank can approach the bank and take additional working capital. They can also have an increased term loan, all without additional collaterals. What is the intent behind this? The intent behind this is because when they restart, they'll have some fixed costs to first attend to and then only go forward. This will come of help. Because also, this fixed cost having been taken care of, how do they buy raw material for which the money is being given? So, it was important for us to make sure that we brought in something with which We are not naming sector-wise, but anyone who wants to access can get it. And the way in which we worded it, and that is how the order is also coming out, and that's how the cabinet has given its approval, is it should be automatically available for anyone who approaches the bank. And in fact, I've even informed the bank, and I'm meeting with the banks tomorrow, inform the banks to say, please make sure that you will contact the enterprises yourself, because at the branch level, they know who their clients are, and they would do it. And I must say that the banks had done this in a limited sort of way between September and October of 2019, when we went on an outreach program. And therefore, they know what we are trying to tell them, and they're willing to do that. So after being contacted, it will be up to the client, the enterprise, to say, oh yes, thank you, I want it, or only on his refusal will that benefit not be extended to him. In other words, I'm saying give it to everybody unless that person or the business himself says, I don't need it. So we are not excluding anybody. We are saying give it as much as possible to as many people as who want it, not restrict them by anything. Size, no matter. The sector to which they belong, no matter. So you may name any number of sector and tell me, you've not named them. Yes, I've not named them. But the scheme is so designed that they can definitely go ahead taking that facility from the bank. And for the bankers, to be fair to them, they have really been going forward to address the issue, even as we were talking last year, how to improve liquidity. Now, in between, we've heard a lot of people say the banks are not going to take the risk and give this loan. They are not willing to take the risk. So how are we going to handle? We've had extensive discussion with the banks and with the RBI, and only then we've come up with this guarantee schemes. So the risk which has got to be faced by the banks when they're extending this is now guaranteed by the government. So genuine commercial decision at the point in time where you're giving it, if in case it results in a failure because of COVID, the blame is not going to be on the banks. And who's going to take the loss? We are going to take the loss. So I want to assure through you to all businesses, please go ahead approaching the banks, take the loans. Please have the money in your hand to restart the business. Because item-wise, sector-wise, if I start looking for facility to reach them, it might be very difficult for me to do it.
But Ms. Sitharaman, I want to ask you that we've spoken to banks. You've said that these will be risk-free loans, but banks don't know at what rate they have to give. The customers who want these loans, the first question they are asking is, what is the rate I'm going to get it at? In any case, the customer, the enterprise which is going to take this loan has to repay it. At least that's the manner and the thought when he takes a loan. Even if banks have set aside money, the customer is not coming forward to take the loan. He doesn't know what the interest rate is. The bank doesn't know what the interest rate is. The bank is saying we are waiting for some signal to come from the center, and the center still hasn't said. I'm just saying, while the intention may be there are many gaps as far as the total information for this to be converted into reality is concerned. How do we bridge that gap?
No, you're absolutely right, Navika. But what I want to highlight is the sense of urgency in this matter is well understood by the government. Or else, when did I start announcing? Last Wednesday. When did I finish? Sunday. Which is that one cabinet which has happened, cabinet meetings normally, you are aware, happens on Wednesdays. Yesterday's cabinet has already approved all this. So within a day or two, the banking department will give a notification to very clearly tell the banks what is the rate of interest in which you're going to give, how are the other detailings to be worked out. All that is going to go through. Yesterday, the cabinet has cleared it already within 3 days.
So what's the rate of interest? Is it going to be concessional?
They will give you the details out. Why should I tell you here?
But is it going to be concessional? Because the reason I'm asking you this is there are many international bodies. You talk about Barclays, you talk about McKinsey's, you talk about so many agencies, whether it's banks in India, all have done their sums and all have come out and said that out of the 20 lakh crores, the fiscal provision that you've made comes in the best case scenario to 1.3% of the GDP, not the 10% that was stated as the value of this 20 lakh crore announcement. And if it is 1.3%, do you think it's going to be enough to sort out, number one, the supply side, which has come to a standstill, but even above that, it's the demand side. Because demand, unless there is demand, people right now are saying, what do we produce, for whom do we produce, where are the people in the market, where are the markets open at all?
Navika, first thing, when you quote all these institutions and tell me, look, they've said, oh, you've done only 1%, where is the 20 lakh? I don't want to get into an argument with anybody. But the fact is, I've also not fudged what I've given out. I've also not claimed something which is not true. I've also not said, this is what I've done, which is completely controversial and people are going to ask me a question. Everything what I've stated is completely open and subject to any kind of scrutiny people want to have. And that is why I also keep repeating, I'm absolutely conscious of two things. I'm dealing with public money. It's Government of India's money. It's people of India's money. I have to be accountable in the way in which I'm going to use it. And I know I'm using it in an extraordinary circumstance where people need the help. And it is people of India who need the help. So there should not be any hesitation. And I also have to say all this and more in the parliament. So will I do a job which is going to be causing any worries or raising any questions? So I don't want to quibble with them on that ground. But then, how tight is this supply side, demand side argument? You think anything that which is given in the supply side is going to stay like that in a watertight box? When I pay enterprises to buy their raw material, to pay their fixed costs, to pay the wages, is that not going into the hands of people from which demand is going to get spurred? Yes, these are very convenient ways in a economics study, a very convenient way to understand these are supply side, these are demand side. Are they watertight? Don't they flow into each other? So it's fine to say, oh, you've done supply side. What about the demand? And if the demand side for some only means giving money in the hands of the people, all right, that's also happening.
When? Where?
It is happening, right? In this package. It is happening in this package. PM Garib Kalyan, that's happening.
That happened.
What is Manrega?
It's
Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. What is that? Money in the hands of people. Is it not? EPF, it is their money. It's not my money. But at least that which is locked up, we are saying give it. Construction workers' money, give it. It is going into the hands of the people.
Mr. P. Chidambaram, your predecessor who sat in North Block, has said that there is virtually nothing that has been provided in terms of cash in the hands of people. We are seeing on a daily basis migrant laborers who don't even have money to go from where they are working to where they live at the moment. And these scenes haven't left us over the last 2 weeks. We've just, continuously seeing this. We're talking about small and medium scale enterprises where entrepreneurs have had to shut down because of the lockdown and they haven't had any income that's flowing. You talk about the service sector. It's down, and like how? You talk about the travel industry, it's down, and like how? Even the informal sector where people did so much work which probably didn't even get counted, shops opening, salons opening, restaurants opening, everything is at a standstill. The middle class has been impacted because either they've had salary cuts because their employers have been going through a bad time, or they've lost their jobs. That is the situation. If you're only going to look at the 1.7 lakh crore that you're talking about in terms of cash transfers, you think it's going to be enough for a population of 135 crore people in this country?
I'll start with what I said earlier. I can give so much and more, but is that going to be enough? Nothing is enough, Navika, and in a kind of a situation that we are in, nothing is enough. And even with that said, I'll tell you, where am I in this fiscal year? we are only in the second month. April 1st starts the new year. We are in the second month. I have 10 months to go. I have a pandemic on which no one tells me it's retreating yet. And we do not even know even if it's retreating from tomorrow, whether it's going to come back again within the financial year that we're talking about. Have I got to be, other than the liquidity for which I've shown you the figures, and you keep looking at it from the point of view, oh, no, somebody has said it's 1.2, somebody else is saying it's 0.75. I'm telling you the liquidity which is going to be available in the market, in the economy. No, that doesn't matter. Tell me how much came from your purse. Tell me how much came from room number 36 in this finance ministry. How much from 136? How much from 133? Look at where it's going and look at where the liquidity is going to reach.
But people are objecting that even liquidity that has been provided to the Reserve Bank is being counted as part of this package of the part of the 20 lakh crore.
Is Reserve Bank giving elsewhere outside of the country, or is it giving to the Indian people? And is Reserve Bank any private party? Excuse me. Let's please come to talking about the actuals. And also please focus on where the money is going, where the liquidity is. Is the government standing by its word? And is the liquidity really going into the hands of people who are waiting for it? Or is it going to people who don't deserve it? And if there is such a category at all now in this pandemic situation. So I would want all of us to please focus on how we are looking at empowering people, standing by with people where they have a problem, rather than tell me, oh no, that's Reserve Bank. Oh no, this is only this much budget. All this is adding to the liquidity in the economy, and that's what we want now. Activities should get triggered so that they can restart. We are focusing on that.
Are you saying for you paramount is fiscal discipline? Is that why you're keeping an eye so firmly on fiscal deficit numbers? Are you saying that deficit financing is something that the government will not resort to even in the package that has been announced so far? And what many people are talking about, that fiscal deficit number, the FRBM, in this kind of a situation can be set aside. Are you saying you're not going to go by that advice? And are you saying that the Modi government keeps its priority as no freebies as a principle? You only will generate jobs and people earning through those jobs. Is that a question of principle, or is that a question of not having the money?
You packed up too many things in this question. I've already told you that my first focus is restart the economy, restart businesses who have to now come back to working because they all have been asked to shut their businesses down because we didn't want the pandemic to spread. So I need to help them restart. That's the first one. Second, I'm also looking at how people who have to have immediate cash for getting the raw material to start and so on, because by making them start, the impact will have some kind of cascading effect in the economy. The multiplier effect will work. That's a second. Third, you say financing the deficit. We are only in the second month. At this stage, I have not considered that. And I'm focusing on making sure businesses start. Everybody gets to doing something or the other. Whether they've gone back to their villages, there through the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, and here through the various steps that we've taken. Long-term measures, we're also making sure through this we are able to reform some of the sectors which will have a direct bearing on those who are in that sector. If agriculture reforms are being brought in, because we want farmers to be relieved, completely, remove the shackles which are now literally holding him back. I gave this example. Nobody in the manufacturing sector is limited to say, you will sell only to these licensees and not to anybody else. Why should the Indian farmer be curtailed by that? In fact, somebody was interestingly this morning telling me that this is one of the major steps that we have taken now. And they went to the extent of saying recorded history. I don't know if I'm right. I'm hazarding repeating the words that I've heard. It's a hazard I'm taking, I'm repeating it, subject to test. After Alauddin Khilji, who apparently curtailed farmers from selling produce only to certain areas, since then, during the British times too, it was never touched. That restriction on the farmer. I think Prime Minister Modi has been trying through the various model codes about which I spoke in my budget to various states saying, please move, and many states are moving forward with that. We have removed that shackle now, and I think it's a major step forward for the Indian farmer. So we're doing that. So I want to again put before you the expanse that we've touched even within the second month of this extraordinary year.
Ms. Sitharaman, there is a lot of reform that has been in our pending books. Why are those reforms being clubbed with this package is a question many economists have asked. So when I come back, I'll take a short break. When I come back, I want to ask you, why are these reforms being clubbed with this economic package? And these reforms should have happened anyway in the last 6 years, if not before. Why are we looking at doing them now as if to say that, oh, the economy is being addressed now? These problems already existed. We'll discuss that right after this very short break. Welcome back, Ms. Sitharaman. I want to ask you, the opposition party, especially Congress party, Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, have both targeted your government as being totally heartless and not being able to look at the migrant labor issue. Number one, they have criticized the fact that the lockdown was announced with just 4 hours notice and no migrant labor was given time to organize himself or organize getting home. Which is why now we are seeing a flux of people on the roads, people who are dragging their suitcases and children sleeping on it, pregnant women are delivering on the roads. There are trailers going on the roads with lots of laborers on it. There've been accidents. 119 laborers have died on the way. Why are we handling the migrant crisis in the manner we are? And Rahul Gandhi was sitting on the pavement with these migrant laborers right here in the capital city of Delhi. And we have a situation in a 21st century India that we can't organize ourselves to look after them. Trains are arranged late. There's no reaction for the first some time. There's no food. There's no money. And we're still talking about a financial package that will pull them out.
There's no hesitation in saying all of us will have to handle the pandemic situation and learn from it, and all of us are in it together. The migrant issue is something on which I know intensely both the Railway Minister Piyush Goyal and the Home Minister Amit Shah are engaged literally daily, engaging with the state governments, talking to the state governments, asking them when they want the train. The timeline is also to be understood. The Prime Minister appealed when he brought the lockdown to all of them, saying, please remain where you are. We'll try to, do provide shelter, give them medical facility and also food. State governments actively engaged in having them in shelters, providing them cooked food and taking care of them. All state governments have done that. Now, after the first extension, there was this feeling because many of these ministers, all of us, have been also talking to the district collectors literally every alternative day, saying if there's any mismatch in terms of the facilities, if there's a need for something else more and so on. So, state governments had a very good idea of how many migrants are where, what kind of problems they are facing, and we were trying to help them. But after the second time, when the extensions got furthered, naturally, migrants started having this restlessness, and also it is a trauma they are undergoing. They are somewhere, the families are elsewhere. They don't know if they get affected by coronavirus, what happens to them. At the same time, their families, if there is someone who's affected. So once that stress in the migrant who's in a camp starts building up, and gradually the input started coming that they might want to move. In fact, there are specialized cases, specialized in the sense, particular cases of fishermen who were caught up from Andhra and Orissa, who were held somewhere in the coast between Gujarat and Maharashtra. Buses were provided and they were ferried all the way. There were workers somewhere else who were held much before this train started moving between states and to their respective home states. Buses were arranged for very many of them. Particular students' problem in Kota, where many of these states, buses again were taking them back to their respective states. So it's not as if this movement hadn't begun much before the trains issue came in. Once the states were very clearly said, please make sure you have a better idea of where are these migrants present in various districts. Tell us a station in a district or in any place. And within 3 hours of you notifying that destination, we'll send you the train. I highlight this issue because even as this arrangement started, look at the disproportionate way in which states have responded. I'm not blaming them. Each has its own assessment, and also, after all of us are handling this pandemic. After all, first time, never this country has seen a pandemic of this kind, and God forbid we don't want one more. But even then, each state had its own challenges, and in responding towards this railways appeal, saying you tell us when you want, there has been differentiated response. Speed in response was varied.
You're being charitable when you say that they have had challenges. Are you saying challenges or politics?
No, I'll just tell you in a minute. I'll complete this. Some states where, let's say, at a time they had asked for 10 trains, some other states would have just asked for 1. Not that their migrant numbers were lesser than this state which would have asked for 10. So like that, the speed with which the evacuations were happening varied state by state. Then when the migrants have, after all, the word of mouth is a very powerful tool. When migrants started hearing that people have moved by train in some areas and they are still waiting, they said, no more waiting, we'll start moving. God knows when we will get the train. All this works in the mind of a migrant. I'm just putting this before you because it's necessary for us to understand the
human cycle.
And then when the trains come, and there some states have put them all in, the railways give them the food, water and everything, they go get off, they get off. Now all of us, I repeat this statement. You may think that I'm repeating it in a banal kind of a fashion. No, all of us are in it together. But what upsets me is every state will have to look at sprucing up their own way in which they respond to this problem, rather than choose a state and keep targeting them. You've not done it, you've not done it. Whilst, let's say, for the Congress party, to look at their own states where they are in governance, to see if their migrant workers problem are completely solved or not. Or is there a problem in those states? You've not even turned towards your states. But your focus is all over there, that one state. Batter them. Batter them, batter them. Please turn 180 degrees towards a state where you're in governance. Tell us what is happening there. That hypocrisy playing up on something which is a very sensitive human problem, just not acceptable. And that is why in my press conference, I said with my hands folded together, Party President, Congress, please, let's be responsible. Is this what we're doing to this country? Would you want at this time to play on it, or to join forces to say, we'll all help the migrants to go back to their homes?
But are you expecting complete cooperation? Because the opposition
I'm expecting responsible behavior, cooperation or no cooperation. You can't be hypocritical in this kind of a thing. You can't be literally forgetting what your responsibilities are, which are waiting to be attended to, and talk about something else where people are doing, whether perfectly or otherwise.
But isn't that the nature of politics today? The BJP did it when it was in opposition, and the opposition is doing it today to you.
So, even in a matter like sensitive migrant issue, we are therefore conceding on behalf of the Congress that they are doing politics and not helping. Is that right, Navika? And if it is right, I am right to say you're being hypocritical. You're being absolutely insensitive, and I can now therefore, on your word, tell that they have really been irresponsible as an opposition party.
Well, Ms. Sitharaman, on a day when we're speaking, Nyay scheme has been launched by the Congress party in Chhattisgarh. Now, the Nyay scheme has been discussed. It's a universal basic income that is going to be provided, and they provide it in a state which is Congress governed, when that was the expectation that you would provide through your 20 lakh crore package. Do you think even this is opportunism, or is this the real politics and response, economic response to the need of the hour? Because there can be no better time to introduce the Nyay scheme than now.
Two things I want to say on this. If they think they want to keep up a promise which they have given during the election in a state in which they have been elected to power based on the promises they've given, they're only right in doing it. Good, they're doing it. But they're also the type who give promises and don't keep it. What happened in Madhya Pradesh? Didn't they give promise that they'll waive all the farmers' loans? Why didn't they keep that up? And they were not even COVID days. It was much before. The world was lots more at ease with itself. They didn't do anything there to the farmers. Now poor Shivraj is really struggling to say what should he do. And he is a man of real achievement, so he will do all that has been promised by the BJP. But to glorify that and say, look, we are taking this at this time, you won an election promising, I suppose, whatever you promised. You didn't fulfill it in one state, you were trying to fulfill it in another. And again, making a political point out of it. You won the election, you're duty bound to give it, go give it. Who's stopping you? And don't make a hulla out of it. You owe it to that people because you got their votes.
You would make a halla out of that kind of a scheme. How can you hold Rahul Gandhi responsible?
No.
You would make a halla out of the Garib Kalyan Yojana. You would make a halla out of the Ayushman Bharat. You would make a halla about MNR. How can you say that they should not make a halla?
No.
Are there different
because you
for
asked
different
me,
people?
Because you chose to ask me that they are doing it there. Wouldn't you do it for all the world? The vote was
Manrega
there.
was their scheme which you are using it. Nyay is their scheme. Would you want to use it? Is a question I want to ask.
I'm glad you're asking that. What was the halat of Manrega? And before I get into that, I like to remind you, what was the nationalization of all the banks in this country for? To make sure Indian poor is given the facility. And in roughly 40 years, since after it was introduced, how many Indian poor had an account in the banks? Not even 40%. And within a matter of 5 years, the same public sector banks, because of the way Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana was introduced and was followed, pursued, effectively implemented, today nearly 99%, I still will allow 1%, I guess everybody's got, but still I'll allow for 1%. 99% of the Indians who are particularly in the poorer sections have got their accounts. When was the nationalization and who was the nationalization? How many times after the nationalization has the grand old Congress party come back to power? Did they manage to reach out to all the poor of this country to give them an account? It took a Prime Minister Modi to make sure that every Indian, be it poor, rich, everybody had a bank account. and the poor also could flaunt a card, RuPay card, with which today the balance in those accounts makes the nation proud. The people are understanding the value of keeping their money in their banks. As a result of which today we are able to give them direct payment into their accounts when they need the money the most, without a dalali in between, without pilferage in between. So
you're saying Dalali happened in the Congress era?
100%. 100%.
Not one case has been proven by you.
Cronyism was the feature of.
6 साल हो गए मैडम, एक केस नहीं हुआ, एक conviction नहीं हुई.
That is why we are fighting in courts and winning cases. That is why many of them are coming back to face the law of the land. And therefore, that is one example through which I'd like to tell you the Congress can claim, oh, that's our scheme, this is our scheme, and so on. But let them also own up as to how they've miserably failed in Garibi Hatao, in bringing banking accounts for the poor. And you may bring in schemes, but what was your level of achievement in those? And having improved the Prime Minister, the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, we are now using it effectively, particularly at a time when there is a national kind of a pandemic. That's when such schemes can be used, but you couldn't even use it when it was necessary. You designed it, you implemented it, but you could never use it because your motive was to introduce it with a band baja, saying we've taken care of the garib, the poor and everything else, but you never knew how to implement it successfully.
Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, in the end, I want to ask you one question. You've seen many predecessors in North Block. I think the most tough challenges have come right now with this pandemic. Is the situation for you when you sit alone in your room, when you've been thinking about the problems this country has been facing, how do you feel? How do you feel as a politician? How do you feel as a finance minister? How do you feel as somebody who has to find a solution for a 1.3 billion people? Is it an overwhelming situation, or do solutions come in?
Absolutely important that you ask me this. Each day when I enter that room, many of my predecessors come to my mind. Many of whose days in the ministry I remember from reading about them for the extraordinary conviction with which they worked. Many of them. But I also remember a few others in whose time many such decisions which were taken, which have not really been helpful for this country, which have really put the country into difficulties. Whether they willed it or not, I do not know. Whether it was their intention or not, I do not know. So when I enter that room every day, I do have strongly the feeling that I should learn from all their experience. Do not want to repeat the mistakes of some, but certainly want to be sure that I would perform in such a way that this country can benefit from my period here. Irrespective of my role, I'm not so worried about whether I'll be remembered or not at all. But my tenure there should help people who are looking up to this government to help them in times of need. And therefore, every time I go in, I do very seriously, every day, have that thought coming into me. Such eminent people, I should learn from them. And also learn from many of their mistakes, some of them who committed mistakes knowingly or unknowingly. And I do not want to repeat those
And what
mistakes.
do you think about jokes that do the rounds right after your package? You know, there was one joke which says, Atmanirbharta means sab log apna apna dekh lo, government to paisa nahi degi. Some people come up with jokes like that. Do they bother you?
No, actually, sometimes it sort of makes me relax, saying, oh, all right, people do have the time to make these memes and jokes about it. Some other times it sort of makes you think, saying, really, is it as bad as that which they project you to be? But I don't allow that to worry me more than a few minutes because I have a task to perform.
And we've spoken a lot about the poorer classes of this country, but the BJP was also the party of the middle classes at one time. Have you given them up completely? Because they're looking at in these tough times that the government and the finance minister will look at easing their troubles also. Anything for the middle classes, any more packages that could come, because as you said, nobody knows the end of this pandemic.
But Navika, as I said, we have just finished 2 months of this year. And as I said, again the pandemic, I do not know how it's going to go further. But I'll keep all my options open, because after all, we are here to help everyone, because these are extraordinary times.
Well, so we'll keep coming back to you, because this is work in progress. We do hope the depressive time is behind us, because this country has never seen a lockdown of this nature, challenges of this nature, and we do hope good times are around the corner. Thank you very much, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, for joining me on Frankly Speaking.
Thank you very much, Navika. Thank you.